The state of Oklahoma conducted a fixed guideway study about 1993 or so, so it's about 15 years old. But even using that study that's 15 years old, it showed that using a light rail system got the highest rating of any mass transportation system that they studied, and they certainly studied everything from buses and HOV lanes and carpooling and light rail, heavy rail, streetcars, trolleys, all those kinds of things. So to me that was very surprising, and it's disappointing to me that the state of Oklahoma hasn't pursued that.
It was an idea that had been bantered around for 30 years, and that's fairly common. I mean, but not really pursued seriously. Studies that were pretty much designed to fail. You know, a lot of information in these studies that was really kind of based on kind of very speculative assumptions. And so, but in August of 2003, Governor Richardson said, you know, I'm really going to make this a priority of this administration. And in fact, one of his statements was, we're not going to study it. We're just going to do it. And so that was really when this whole thing started in earnest. And, you know, shortly thereafter, our state legislature was in special session, and they were looking at a fairly large road bond package. And this project was added to it, and that was really how the funding was put in place to do it. And, you know, once that was in place, it really was a matter of just getting it done. And, you know, the governor outlined a pretty aggressive schedule to get this first phase in place, and then an even more aggressive schedule to get it extended to Santa Fe. As a result of this project, I've spent a lot of time talking to other people associated with rail new starts in other areas. I mean, I think what we did here was pretty unconventional based on what's happened elsewhere in the country. I think there's a lot to be said for identifying a workable piece of rail. And workable might be too broad of a term, but a functional, you know, and starting that, as opposed to waiting 10, 12, 15 years before you've got everything figured out for your entire system. Because the bottom line, and you can see this all the way across the country, even if you think that you can plan everything out from beginning to end, you're going to be wrong. Metrolink in Los Angeles started with 2 lines, and now they have, what, 9 or 10? And they didn't anticipate the growth in their system. Salt Lake City started with their first phase, is going to open next spring. Already, they've got voter approval. They're working on their second phase. You know, and so I think if you look at most rail new starts in this country, it begets more rail. And if you're going to try and anticipate all of that, you can spend a lot of time doing that. Meanwhile, everybody's losing the benefit of having it nearer term. And the benefit just isn't in having a system that people can ride. I think based on our discussions with Denver and Phoenix and others, Salt Lake, you know, the opportunities that you lose or you can't take advantage if you don't have something in place are many. It's businesses locating strategically, it's locating public facilities strategically, it's locating new housing strategically around a transportation asset. And if it's not there, you can't do that. And so I think there are a whole bunch of things rolled up in the cost of not doing something that go way beyond just the transportation utility of the system. And certainly our discussions with Denver, because early on, you know, I mean, one of the criticisms about this was, you know, there may come a time when this might be useful, but it's not today. You know, you should wait. And I think the message certainly that we've gotten from other areas is you're the only ones that started when you should have. We waited too long. We waited 20 years too long or 30 years too long, and now it's costing us a lot more money. Fast Tracks is $4.7 billion. We have to retrofit this thing. Yes, it's going to be disruptive, but it's the only way we can really achieve any kind of realistic mobility in our community. And so I think that starting the way we did made sense. We have 50 miles in this first phase as a result of our purchase of the line, the tracks there. It was not that big of a deal in terms of most rail startup costs to get this first phase going. We knew it would have an immediate impact, and it would start changing people's thinking about transportation in the region as well, and it has. I think you'll find enthusiasm for rail transportation in urban areas in this country anywhere you go. There's a basic understanding by most people that rail transportation is something that's good for the community. And they may understand it in only the vaguest of terms, but I often tell people, you already have support. The real key is not to turn that support off, because it's there already. You got to cultivate it, but it's there. And I think that statement is pretty much borne out by a poll our newspaper did right before the election last year statewide about this project, and in the question that was asked, registered voters included the total price tag and the annual subsidy, and statewide this project had almost 59% of those polled supporting it and only 31% opposed. And this is a very large state, and anytime you have an issue that gets that kind of support statewide, I think it's pretty indicative of something other than just the project. It's an underlying support for a transportation system and a rail-based component of that transportation system, because I don't know any other way to explain it. It's not so much about how it's going to benefit me personally if I live in the rural part of the state. I think that like any state that's fairly rural, that has a large urban core, a lot of those people come to this area a couple times a year, whether it's for the state fair or something else, and it's a recognition that we can't just purely look at our state from kind of a myopic, selfish standpoint. And yeah, that would be a good thing for Albuquerque, even if I get no benefit from it at all. I think there were other things that kind of went along with this bond package, which made it easier to sell from a funding perspective. There was a lot of road construction in these rural parts of the state as well, and I don't think people had that in mind. I just think there's kind of an innate sense that passenger rail was a good thing and should be a good thing again, and that and you just, the key is not to mess that up. That's not to say this project didn't